We just came from the South Street area. We walked up 9th Street and took a look through the Italian market here in South Philadelphia. Then I took Alex up to the South Street area. We looked at some of the shops up there, ran into a couple of my friends up there, which was very synchronous. We encountered some synchronicity along the way, which was nice. And we're just walking along East Passio Avenue now, heading back toward my house. So along the way we encountered some interesting dynamics. We stopped at a thrift store that had a lot of used books. I found a book that I don't think I'm necessarily going to agree with the premise, because I think it's kind of like more atheistic based. It's called The End of Faith: Religion, Terror, and the Future of Reason. I'm going to check it out just to see, because it was for free. I found it in a trash bin, But the interesting thing is it was more synchronicity, because I opened up my computer, or actually I took out my phone today and saw an ad for this book, and then I found it in the garbage bin at a thrift store just off of South Street in South Philadelphia, which I thought was really synchronistic. Maybe something wants me to read it, I don't know. But we also found the Quintessential School of Mind DVD by Ramtha, and we were talking about the New Age movement a little bit. And I was saying, I've heard some of Ramtha's stuff, and some of it is interesting. We were talking about prophets and people who make predictions and things like that, how they always seem to have an excuse when the prophecy doesn't come true, and the fallback is, well, we made changes happen, and that is a different timeline now. Now we're on a new timeline where that disaster doesn't occur. And we were saying that's kind of like dubious, because it seems like they're just trying to reel people in to get them to pay attention to their material or buy their books or DVDs. And it just led us back to talking about the whole New Age movement, how it's kind of like a trap, kind of like a spiritual cul-de-sac where they're spinning people's wheels and not really getting them to see the really true important things that have to be recognized to understand where we're at and how we get out of this mess if we're going to get to where we say we want to go. And it all comes down to recognizing sovereignty and being willing to stand up for your natural rights once you know what they are. It's funny, we ran into my friend Fernando, and he was talking about how the police had set him up, and he's got an FBI file out on him because he's talking about sovereignty. I talk about this word all the time. You ask anybody, just ask anybody, do a social experiment, go out on the street or ask your neighbors or your friends or your family members, are you a slave? Just ask them that simple question. Are you a slave? And I guarantee you 100% of them will say, no, I'm not a slave. And then just, the response to that should be, you just made the claim that you're sovereign, that you are a sovereign. And, this word has some kind of a stigma attached to it, because people don't understand what the word means. We don't even know the meaning of the words we speak. The word sovereign comes from Latin. The first part of it, S-O-V-E-R. It comes from the Latin adverb super, S-U-P-E-R. P and V, along with B, they're kind of used interchangeably in many cases. In classical Latin, you'll often see, you won't see the V character. It's not really present in classical ancient Latin. So, that's rendered with a P. Just like in the word government, the derivation from gubernare, there's a B in that instance where in English you would have a V. You would render it as a V. So the word super in Latin means above or beyond. And then the second part of the word reign comes from the Latin regnum, the noun regnum. Regnum means rulership or control, as in a king ruling his subjects or a master ruling his slaves. Rulership, external to the self. Control over other people. That's what the word regnum means. So you put them together, super regnum, above or beyond, external rulership or control. So what do you have? One who is not a subject, one who is not a slave, one who is not ruled by another. That's all a sovereign means. Nobody rules me. Nobody is my rightful ruler. Nobody's my rightful master. I'm nobody's slave. No one is. You know, so you ask people, are you a sovereign? And they get all, what are you saying? What does that mean? You know, no, I'm not a sovereign. Well, you know, people don't understand. All you're asking them is, are you a slave or are you not a slave? That's it. That's all it means. You ask somebody that, then they all of a sudden think they have the answer. No, of course not. I'm not a slave. But they can't, boom, spit that back out with the meaning of the word sovereign because of this mind control stigma that's attached to the word through repetition and the obfuscation of the definitions of words. The meaning, the definition is obfuscated by endless repetition and telling people that it means something that it doesn't mean. You know, and until we can understand the meaning of the words we're speaking, we're not going to make very much progress in exercising our sovereignty and in maintaining our sovereignty. So, talking about the New Age movement.
You're mentioning that bookstore used to have conspiracy-related books and things of that nature, and that is no more.
Trying to think of the name of it. Garland of Letters on South Street in Philadelphia. It's a very New Age-oriented bookstore. You know, love and light is all there is, and all that. You know, so they used to have they still have a few good occult books in there, but they used to have a lot of conspiratorial related books, you know, things talking about the rise in totalitarianism, the loss of freedom, you know, globalism, things like that. And they've kind of almost sanitized those books out of the place because they're like, that's negative. I don't want to focus on that. I want to talk about the light, and I want to talk about just, you know, the higher consciousness, but they're not exposing people to the problem. And I think that's a problem in and of itself. Not to look at the negative, you know, gets us looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. You know, thinking that, it's all great and it's just all a big awakening happening and we don't need to worry about those bad things that are going on in the world. And I look at that as total bullshit, you know, because if you're not aware of what's wrong, you're not really going to be doing the things that are necessary to be doing to set things right in the world because you're ignorant. And there's no such thing as negative information. It's all that which is going on right now. You either are aware of it or you're ignorant of it. You're ignoring it. You're ignorant. So, you know, this whole idea of don't look at that because it makes me feel bad is nonsense, because if we're going to be able to build ourselves up in consciousness spiritually and be able to recognize the patterns that are taking place around us, then we have to be open to all information and deal with it appropriately. Not give in to the fear response, you know, not say, well, that makes me feel bad, so I don't want to look at that because it generates a fear reaction in me. You need to own that fear, and you need to use it to motivate you to do right action in the world, to correct all these bad things that are going on and expose them. Talk about them and expose them and make other people aware of them so they stop ignoring them. The New Age movement is not active in that process. And they're doing, as far as I'm concerned, they're doing the world a disservice by not being active in that process. You know, they're not bringing things to the light. They're only talking about the light. You know, part of the process of expanding awareness is bringing the things that are wrong in the world to people's attention so they understand what's going on.
You mentioned The Secret in your presentation, and there was a scene in The Secret that I found to be a little bit offensive when they were talking about the protesters, as if by raising awareness about the issues that they are in fact causing the problem. And I felt that worldview that some people have picked up on to be highly destructive and offensive.
And just plain wrong. This idea that we empower things by bringing them to people's attention and talking about them is nonsense. That's not what empowers something. What empowers something that's negative is not talking about it, not working through it, not doing something positive and constructive to bring it to balance and to set it right, to put it on the right course. If you refuse to look at what is, then you're going to be fueling the things that you don't want. It's exactly the other way around, as most New Agers are trying to explain it to people, and whether they're just people who are just duped into believing these things, or whether they're willfully part of a movement to try to obfuscate how this dynamic really works, to try to deliberately confuse people. I don't know. Maybe it's a little of both. But in any event, we have to understand that we do not empower things simply by making ourselves aware of them and then talking about them and bringing them to other people's attention.
That's a very good point. And the New Age movement, meditation is important. But to me, it's about seeing reality as it is, which is a Buddhist concept,
sure,
not as we want it to be.
That's right. And, I talked about in my presentation at Free Your Mind the abuse of this modality and consciousness of meditation. Meditation just means to bring to the middle, to take consciousness to the center. And it helps us to get to our center and hopefully to remain there, but we don't want to go toward the other side of imbalance. Meditation is for people who have a lot of chronic left brain hemispherical imbalance, which means that they're a control freak, they're dominators, they're obsessed with the physical, they can't really think outside of the box, they're trapped in a very materialistic worldview and paradigm. Meditation can help people to center the mind and get out of that pure left brain worldview. But if you take it too far, then you're going toward right brain imbalance. Right brain chronic hemispherical imbalance will lead to a state where you won't stand up for yourself. You could go into even states of, self-loathing and, just wanting to accept, and I'm not worthy of anything better than this, and I just have to accept it the way that it is and never try to change it. And that's not using your will. That's just laying down. That's just taking whatever the default that's handed to you is. And that's not enlightenment. That's not real spirituality. That's a trap that is, I think, laid out in many cases by dominators who want people to simply go into that right brain imbalance so that they will lay down, not stand up for their rights, and accept whatever the current conditions are that are being handed to them. So that's the abuse of meditation. The proper usage is to, if the hemispheres of the brain are imbalanced toward the left, to bring them back to the middle, to bring them back to the center. Then we could use a modality called contemplation to keep it there.